France lost the Sahel. So why is it still writing the rules for the Sahel at the United Nations? The AES kicked French troops out, but inside the UN Security Council, France still holds the pen. You see, when France lost influence on ground in the Sahel, it didn't just pack its bag and leave. It still holds a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. A permanent seat means a permanent pen. Today, we are going to look at how that pen has been working. So let's get everyone on page. The AES, made up of 3 landlocked countries, have been fighting jihadist insurgents since 2012. You see, they tried working with France, they tried working with the US, they tried working with ECOWAS, they also tried working with the UN's own peacemaking mission, MINUSMA. And you see, none of these cooperations with the superpowers stopped the attacks. The terror death toll in the Sahel has gone from roughly 5,400 people a year in 2017 to over 25,000 in 2024. From 5,400 to 25,000, that's a very big gap. Imagine that this insurgency in the Sahel started with just 5,400 casualties, and the international community made up of all these people we just talked about came in, but the number instead grew to 25,000, and that information is referenced from the Global Terrorism Index 2025. So at some point, the government said enough. Between 2020 and 2023, military takeovers swept through all 3 countries, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. And there were people in the streets cheering, not because war is fun, but because the old arrangement clearly wasn't working. We all know what followed after then. They expelled French troops, the American troops, and also walked out of ECOWAS. We all know this. Now, I was giving all that backstory so that we should all understand what comes next. We have all heard the phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword. At the UN Security Council, that's not a metaphor, it's literally a system. There is something called the penholder system. 3 countries, France, the UK, the United States, they all hold what's called penholder status on most key files at the Security Council. What that means in plain language, they are the ones who write the first drafts. So they literally decide which words go in, they decide which words stay out. They call emergency meetings when they want them. They slow things down when it suits them better. And France has been the pen holder on Mali and the broader Sahel file since 2012. Now think about that. France get expelled from Mali in 2022, and we all remember the moment when the Malian government formally challenged France's penholder status at the Security Council in March 2023. And even then, after all that, France still held the pen on the G5 Sahel Joint Force file right through 2024. Alright, pay attention. Let me make this to be very, very simple. It's like being fired from a job, but still being the one who makes the company's press releases. Now, I want to be fair here. The pen holder system isn't something France invented to target Africa specifically. It is a structural arrangement that grew from how the P5 has always dominated the council. And there are other pen holders on related Sahel files. Sierra Leone and Denmark became co-pen holders on UNOWAS and the UN Office for West Africa, for example. But when it comes to the core Mali and G5 Sahel agenda, France shaped that story for over a decade. So the question worth asking is, how has that power been used? You see, recently, the France-Africa Summit in Nairobi, all of us in Africa, most of us in Africa, we really want the continent to grow. And we all know France had an image that isn't really good in Africa. So it's not France's fault to try to solve that image. So we saw this summit as France trying to make amends. But when you get deep into the details of the summit, you start asking questions. By the end of this video, you will understand why some people were protesting in Nairobi. People left from Europe, left from the US, left from Burkina Faso, left from South Africa to protest outside that summit. I wasn't really happy with it because I It's not a bad thing for France to try to make amends with Africa if it actually understands that it is time for it to make amends. But then after looking at the substance and also looking at what's going on in the Sahel, I asked several questions. By the end of this video, you'll fully understand what's actually going on. I'm not pointing a finger directly to France, but I'm just playing my analysis lane in this video. Now, let me walk you through what happened in MINUSMA, because this is important context. MINUSMA, the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali, was deployed in 2013. Over the next 10 years, the EU alone spent 8 billion euros on security and development in the Sahel. The US put in more than $5.5 billion. And that's according to the Munich Security Report 2024. And in that same period, the number of terrorism deaths in the Sahel went up, not down, up, from roughly 5,400 a year in 2017 to over 24,000 by 2024. The Sahel now accounts for over 51% of global terror-linked unalived people. 51%. So Mali's Assimi Goïta looked at MINUSMA and said, this is not working. And the Malians had a specific complaint, which is worth hearing. They said MINUSMA was consistently producing damning human rights reports against them, while the actual jihadist groups kept expanding. Now, here is where the penholder dynamics gets sharp. When Mali asked the UN Security Council to end the MINUSMA project in 2023, the Malian representative stood up at the council and said, and I am paraphrasing from the UN's own press records, the draft resolution shows that France, as penholder, is hostile to the Mali government. Now, that's not an activist with a megaphone. That's a sitting government addressing the Security Council. France, for its part, said MINUSMA's human rights work was legitimate and necessary. And honestly, some of the reports about abuses in Mali are serious and deserve scrutiny. That's not nothing. But the question for our analysis is, when a country is fighting for its survival against the terror also becomes the subject of the international community's scrutiny, while the groups attacking it are barely on the agenda. What does that feel like from the inside? You see, I will tell you what it looks like from the outside. It looks like the referee is also on the other team. Now, fast forward to November 2025. Sierra Leone, which is both ECOWAS chair and the Security Council president for November, convenes an open briefing. The agenda item is peace consolidation in West Africa. The meeting is about the Sahel. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger are present as invited guests. Underline invited guests. They are not council members. They cannot vote. They cannot set the agenda. They are essentially witnesses at a hearing that could shape international policy towards their own countries. France gets up and speaks. According to the official record from France's UN delegation, they say they will continue to support relevant UN programs and counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahel. On the surface, that sounds reasonable or maybe even helpful. But watch the layers under it. France suspends counter-terrorism cooperation with Mali. France declared Malian embassy staff persona non grata. Mali did the same to French diplomats. Both sides basically expelled each other's intelligence community. And yet at the UN table, France is still positioned as a partner in Sahel security. You see, this is the part that Pan-Africans find deeply frustrating. And I think it is worth examining deeply rather than just dismissing. The Sahel states say, we rejected you, we build our own thing, and the response at the multilateral level is essentially, that's interesting, but we're still here and we are still talking about you. Okay, wait, let me stop here for a second. I know some of you are watching this and thinking, aren't the AES actually struggling with the terror guys? Isn't the security situation getting worse? Yes, that is happening, especially recently on the 25th of April. Nobody sensible enough is ignoring that. There is a question I want you to be concerned about, and I want you to hold this in your mind as we keep on going in this video. Is the international response in the Sahel designed to help the AES countries or designed to manage them? You see, there is a difference, and the answer isn't probably clean. It's probably both things at once, which is exactly why this is worth thinking about carefully. In March 2023, something quietly remarkable happened. Mali sent a formal letter to the UN Security Council President, challenging France's right to be the penholder on matters concerning Mali. Think about what that takes. You are a landlocked country in West Africa, going up against a permanent member of the Security Council in writing, formally on record. That's not a small move. You see, Mali's argument was essentially, how can the country we have expelled for interfering with our affairs be the one who writes the resolutions about us? It's a fair question. You see, there's an African proverb I always like to use, and I always like you to say it at the same time with me. Until the lion tells its own story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. You see, someone told me in the last video that I didn't use an African proverb. That's in the last video. So this time I decided to come with another one. You see, the penholder system didn't collapse. France's rule shifted somewhat. The UNOWAS file moved to Sierra Leone and Denmark as co-penholders. But the broader P3 dominance of the agenda didn't change. And this is the institutional tensions that the AES countries are navigating. You see, you can build your own bloc, own your own passports, form your own military, but the UN Security Council, that's not something you can just opt out of. The world still runs through it. Now, here is something that complicates the story, and I think it's important to say it clearly. The AES didn't just kick out France and sit alone. They invited Russia in. Wagner Group, now rebranded as Africa Corps, has about 1,500 fighters in Mali. Russian troops are present in Burkina Faso and Niger too. And Russia happens to permanently have a seat at the UN Security Council. So when France tries to push a narrative at the UN Security Council that is critical of the AES leaders, Russia pushes back. The Security Council report of July 2024 says it plainly. Russia's support for the AES has made it difficult for the Council to support ECOWAS positions, which are often aligned with Western interests, which is the Western country that is so interested in the Sahel. You said it already, right? So the AES has effectively traded one foreign patron for another. France is out, Russia is in. And at the UN table, Russia acts as their defender. Now, is that sovereignty or is it a different kind of dependency? I genuinely don't know the answer, and I don't think anyone knows yet. What I do know is that the AES leaders are not naive. They watched Russia come into Mali in 2021 and, at least from their perspective, stabilize enough territory to buy them time. Meanwhile, a decade of Western intervention led things worse. So, from a pure strategic lens, if the result is the same, but one patron respects your sovereignty more publicly, people would obviously pick the one that lets them breathe. Whether those rules are actually different, that's the long-term question. You see, I don't want to go around and tell you what the AES has done. If you have been watching this channel, you know what the AES has done in details. Now, I want to remind you that Niger was the second largest supplier of uranium to the European Union, providing more than 22% of uranium to Europe. And that information is according to the Euratom Supply Agency. Now, France gets roughly about 70% of its electricity from nuclear power. Now, talking about what the AES has built, if you have been following this channel, you know perfectly that image, you know that picture so well. From Burkina Faso to Mali to Niger, these guys have transformed their countries literally. They have practically done what? 20 years of democratic governments before them didn't succeed doing. Now, here is what I think is true and is uncomfortable from every direction. The AES leaders have legitimate grievances. The international architecture has been used in ways that protect external interests over local needs. France's penholder rule did shape narratives in ways the Sahel countries found suffocating. The sanctions, the pressure for elections on Western timelines, the MINUSMA human rights report that seemed louder on government abuses than on jihadist attacks. All of these created a feeling of being managed rather than being helped. That's real. And the picture on security is genuinely complicated. I want to be honest with it rather than tidy it. Many Africans and the populations living in these countries believe things have improved in real ways under these military leaders. The Malian army and the Russian African Corps retook Kidal in 2023. That was a symbolic and strategic victory the previous governments couldn't pull off in over a decade of trying. Burkina Faso's Traoré commands a level of popular legitimacy that elected presidents in the region could only dream about. These aren't small things. They matter. But then there is the harder layer beneath all of this. There is a serious growing body of evidence from testimony on the ground, from academic research published in peer-reviewed journals, and now from recent events suggesting that the terror tearing through the Sahel has never been a simple internal problem. Some of it have had outside help. And the French relationship with the Azawad question goes back a very long way. You see, northern Malians have a lighter complexion. Meanwhile, southern Malians are darker. There are accounts of northern Malians describing French soldiers while still stationed in Mali, asking them while they were still with the blacks, encouraging Azawad. And in 2022, Mali filed a formal complaint at the UN Security Council accusing France of delivering arms to militant groups. In April 2026, a coordinated offensive unalives Mali's defense minister. Within days, the Azawad Liberation Front's spokesman turns up in Paris meeting French security officials. You see, LTL reported France was coordinating with French-speaking Ukrainian soldiers to support rebel operations inside Mali. I'm not saying France ordered the attack. What I'm saying is the colonial history, the soldiers' testimonies, the UN complaints, the FLA in Paris days after the killing. You remember Sylvanus Olympio when he tried to stay away from France CFA? What did the French do? They printed fake new money, the new money that Olympio started in his country. They printed fake ones in order to create inflation and scattered the economy. You see, putting these dots on the table isn't conspiracy, it is due diligence. One side has a permanent seat on the Security Council, the other doesn't. And that asymmetry is the whole story. So what should we actually be watching? Watch the AES Development Bank. If it attracts investment from Gulf states, Turkey, China, that's real financial independence. Diaspora, pay attention here. So what should we be watching? Watch the African Union. The African Union has called for a robust international response to Sahel terror activities. That language can go either way: genuine African-led solutions or another channel for external pressure on African clothing. The UN Security Council was always a tool for great power politics. France didn't invent that. What changed is that the AES called it by name. And in international relations, naming the game is a power move. The real question isn't whether France uses the UN strategically. Every major power does. The real question is, who is using it for Africa? The Sahel is a test case. What African sovereignty actually looks like when the pressure is real, not in a speech, not in a chatter, but on the ground, under fire. I'll be watching, and I think you should be too. See you in my next video. Bye.